What's happening, guys? Welcome back to today's episode of the Rabbit Hole Roundup. This is episode 34. As you guys know, this is an offshoot from the Jared and James channel. I appreciate if you guys could subscribe here and to find all my truther content. Also subscribe to the Jared and James channel if you guys haven't done so already. For today's episode, we're actually being rejoined by one of my favorite guests. Actually have Tyler Hansen, aka the self-proclaimed fittest on earth, back on. So for today's episode, we actually have tons of exciting topics we're gonna get into. We're gonna be talking about this idea of Dogman, aka X-Men. We're gonna be talking about this whole Statue of Liberty post, which has been blowing up on Tyler's page. We're gonna be talking about politicians being cloned. We're gonna be talking about more land beyond the ice wall. We're gonna be talking about new evidence that Tyler's found when it comes to giants as well as dragons. We have a ton of super interesting topics to get into.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Before diving into those, I'm actually first one to ask Tyler. So the last time you came on my podcast, it was probably I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. So during that time, if I remember correctly, you actually had probably 24,000 followers on TikTok, and also you were actually still teaching phys ed at school. You were actually debating whether or not it was time to quit your job and stuff like that. And then recently you actually did decide to quit your job. So you actually took that blind faith, and now you have 200 plus thousand followers come out on TikTok. You also 20,000 followers come out on Instagram. And also you're currently in first in the men's fitness magazine, which is so cool. It's all this stuff is crazy. And so how did this all happen?
Well, I guess I learned that manifestation is a real thing, and I decided to manifest myself into my dream life, and that's currently what's happening. And it's funny, and I like to use the word retire. I retired from my teaching job. I did not quit.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't remember if last time I was on, if I had made that move or not yet. But last time I was on, I was still okay. So let's get into that a little bit. I took the first semester off, as you remember, or
Yes.
If not, I had recently, around this time last year, went through my kind of my wake up process, and I had the whole summer, as a teacher, I had all of summer off to kind of try to figure things out and stop exposing people with the truth I was finding out. Right. But as I was approaching this school year, in August, I still was at the place where I just wanted to talk about it and tell everybody about everything I was learning. And I remember telling my wife, hey, I think if I go back to school right now, I might get fired. So I ended up in first semester off. I had 150 sick days that I had earned up from not taking much time off for 20 years. So I took those. I took some sick leave. I got a doctor's note just for personal reasons. Ended up going back second semester after I got my full bearings back about me. And at that point, I was going back and I was going to make this decision if I was going to continue my teaching career.
Am I crazy, or didn't you quit?
Are you kidding? I didn't quit. Why? You took that seriously.
Didn't really align with a lot of my beliefs and thoughts about the world. And although I wasn't teaching anything that I didn't agree with, just the public school system in general was a place that I just didn't really jive with anymore. So I went back to test the waters and quickly realized that I just didn't want to be part of it anymore. And I was going to finish out the school year, but I mentioned to my boss, my department chair, I was like, hey, Tim, if, I'm really considering not coming back next year. The school knew about my beliefs and everything, and they didn't know where I was at with that, but threatening to fire me or anything. And they knew what I was doing on social media, but they didn't love what I was doing. So I told my boss, I said, hey, I'm really considering not coming back next year. So, he just took that and he ended up talking to HR, and he came back the next day and he was like, well, I talked to HR and they said, if you decide to make that decision, you're not coming back next year. Well, you have enough time saved up where if you don't want to finish this year off, you don't have to. So I had an incident happen with a kid being rude and disrespectful to me, and it had to do with flat earth, but me trying to
I remember
correct him
that
and
actually.
discipline him. And okay,
Right.
so that had happened. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I didn't get
that
any
had
support
happened.
from administration. So that was kind of where I made my decision that I was like, all right, I don't want to be part of this anymore. Offering to pay me to not come back for the rest of the school year, so I'm going to just take advantage. I ended up walking away. I'm still getting paid through partially my
Really?
tax dollars.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
because
so crazy.
I had the sick. Yeah, I had the sick saved up. So they said, hey, like you don't need to come back. We'll pay you through the rest of the year. And like I said, my tax dollars are partially going to that because I live in the community I teach in. Um, so I'm getting paid through August for my teaching
Mhm.
job, and I'm, also at the same time trying to turn this social media content creating into a full time gig,
Right.
and still
That's
trying
so
to keep up
awesome.
my training and my exercise and my personal life. So I'm a very
Mhm.
busy bee at the moment.
Right. Wait. So, like, how'd you actually get into the whole men's fitness, Muslim fitness, like magazine? How'd like that magazine like actually allow you into there with the name of Fittest Flat Earther? How'd that happen?
Well, I had a friend reach. He's a truther friend on Instagram. His name is Shane. He messaged me. He's like, dude, Tyler, you need to sign up for this. I think you can win. And I first saw it and I was like, and it was through Instagram that he was sending it to me. And it was also signing up through Instagram. So I was like, there's no freaking way. Like the second they see my name, Fittest Flat Earther, they're going to
Right. Yeah.
say, no
You
thanks, and
get
give me
like
the boot.
you get like kicked out like right away.
Right. So that's what I thought. And
I would have thought that.
he convinced me and I ended up signing up for it, like kind of half serious.
Football, tree,
I didn't
Mhm.
really think it would lead to anything. And then, the more I started to think about it, and then I got an email saying I was selected as like, one of the final groups that were going to get to go to voting. I was like, oh, like if they didn't initially just eject me, then maybe actually it's going to work the opposite way. Maybe, they want something controversial. Maybe they want someone like me and to bring millions of new viewers to their magazine that maybe
Right.
not, would never pick up that magazine if it weren't for having someone like me that was going to bring a different community to their magazine. So once I realized it wasn't an immediate ejection, I was kind of hopeful because I just know what our community is like, and
Right.
I knew I would have the backing of, 250,000 people that follow me on TikTok and every single person that I communicate with and they're following. So I was like, well, hold on a second. This could actually maybe lead to something. And I've been leading the whole way. It shows you what place you're in. And I've been in first place from day one. There's 10 days of
Wow.
voting. Tomorrow is the last day. But you know what? It's voting right now to get to top 20 for my group. And I don't
Mhm.
even know what that means. I don't know if that's
Right.
top 20 overall. I don't know
Uh,
how they're going to get I don't know how they're gonna select the one winner. I
How
don't know
many
if that's
people?
gonna.
Well, like how many people like are actually participating like in this
I have
event?
no idea. I don't know, but
Hmm.
there's when you click on my link, I can scroll through a whole bunch of guys and see a bunch of super fit, strong looking like fitness dudes on there, and I'm
Right.
the top of the leaderboard over all of them.
So
So it's really
good.
cool, and it's to me, it's not a tribute to me, but more so just our community and people wanting to give back or to
Support.
support
Right.
someone that's going to speak the truth once I
Right.
have the chance to on a very worldwide platform.
And also, speaking of it, it's something like a piece of like it actually comes like as a result, of like all of us being shut up, like shut down like for so long. Like now, all of us actually have it's like opportunity to actually make like all like my own voices like heard. Like, all of us definitely want to get on board and like support someone like who's actually gonna be able like to actually hold like this like massive like platform in order like to actually make all of us like heard. I think.
Yeah, it's I'm still in a little bit of shock of it. We'll see if it actually happens,
Right.
like if I actually win and actually get in a worldwide magazine, and not only that, but am able to speak the truth, and cuz like I won't hold back.
Yeah,
I will speak my truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
I know
Now,
that.
there's a difference between that and them actually saying or putting what I say in the magazine too.
Yeah.
So there's still a long way to go, but I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. And I was actually talking to your not your namesake, but your counterpart namesake, David Weiss today.
All right. Yeah.
He actually is going on the Roseanne Barr
Really?
podcast very soon, and
That's
you know,
awesome.
yeah. So we're reaching some bigger platforms. There's
We're
some
growing.
some truthers and some flat earthers and different people speaking on mainstream platforms. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that we're going in the right direction.
Right. Speaking of which, like, the best place like to actually segue like inside some of these like awesome topics like when you like about plans. Like so I'm actually wanting to ask you like so like what are your thoughts like when it comes to like Tucker Carlson like talking about like the Nephilim as well as the Joe Rogan like having Bart Cyber like come on his like podcast like talk about like the whole fake moon landing. Like, do you think like all this stuff like coming out like into the mainstream like is like ultimately like for like good positive like genuine like purposes like on the other hand like could it actually be like this way of like getting the whole like truly community like on board but then like ultimately leading us like astray like
Yeah, I think the
what do
latter
you
for
think?
sure. I think,
I'm skeptical for sure.
yeah, and I think what I think it comes down to is I think at some point, probably this year, because it's an election year, it's just the way things work. I think something big is going to happen, and I even think something along the lines. I think the way I think it is that even the TikTok ban and all that, I think that is all contrived. I think it's all to eventually have two sides against each other arguing and
Hmm.
distracted. And I think,
Interesting.
I think maybe, for, since I woke up to all this, you think once you realize aliens aren't real, or, at least they're not coming from other planets and galaxies and things like that, and they're going to use that as a distraction. Well, there are, once people wake up to that, then they don't have that as, they're not going to fall for that. So
A,
then for me,
a piece
that's
on
where,
the chessboard, basically.
right. And
It's
that's where
taken off.
Project Bluebeam comes in my opinion, a little bit is they have Project Bluebeam for people like you and I who are awake that aren't going to fall for an alien deception, and then they want us
Right.
looking and saying, "Oh, that's Project Bluebeam." But then if you layer in a third aspect of it, which is maybe what the reality is the Nephilim and fallen angels and things like that, then you
Are
have,
actually going to be coming back, maybe?
yeah, possibly. And not only that, but then you have three different factions of beliefs all fighting to say this is what's
Right.
true, and then everyone's distracted. So that's what I think it
Interesting.
is I think, and that's what flat earth is too. I think there are flat earthers in the community that are controlled, and they
In,
try to lead,
infiltrating everyone,
yeah, and
basically.
they try to lead a flat earth thought process one way, a little different than the way some people are going. And then you have flat earthers who really are like the ones that come to the big ultimate truth, but then you have even them kind of pinned up against each other. And then the biggest thing is they want is divide and distraction, and
Yeah.
if they can lead a little bit of truth and lead you away, I think that's what they love to do. So yeah, I think someone like Tucker Carlson going on and talking about the Nephilim is, I don't think he's trying to do anything but his job and lead people to distraction.
So like definitely I'm agree with that, but like I also like actually want to play a little bit of like devil's advocate here. Like so like what are the chances like maybe it's possible like all these people like are actually having this like genuine like awakening and like maybe it's possible like even some of these like famous people are actually joining into to actually becoming like, part of the intruder community, like actually becoming part of the resistance, like especially because like if you ever listen to Tucker speak, like, nothing he says like actually comes across like as like sounding scripted. So I'm having to like there's obviously like a high likelihood that like maybe probably is like true opposition. But like having said that, like he's definitely speaking like a lot of interesting truth. Like so, like for instance, like he recently spoke about like evolution, like actually being totally fake. Like he spoke about like 9/11, like being like an inside job. Like he spoke about like aliens that like, can actually coming like from outer space, like actually being the Nephilim. Like so, like he's definitely saying like a lot of like, interesting stuff. Like it definitely makes me wonder. Like having said like as like real truthers, like we have to be skeptical. Like especially whenever one of these mainstream guys like who's getting millions and millions like views like is actually being promoted like by like all the algorithms and whatnot.
Yeah, the way I work is unless it's someone like you who I speak with or communicate with on like at least a weekly basis, and I feel like I know you on a little bit of a personal
Personal
level.
level.
Yeah, I'm skeptical, and
Right.
I think one of the things they love to do is gain people's trust, and then
Yeah.
they pull you in, and
Mhm.
then they lead you astray, and it's like the same thing they did with Trump. It's the same thing I
Right.
really think they're trying to do with RFK, and not only
Right.
RFK, but I watched a video with Aaron Rodgers yesterday
Wait, wait,
talking
wait,
about.
wait, wait, wait. So like, speaking of like the whole like Man Rogers situation, like, so like, he's recently been talking about. He actually went on like Eddie Bravo's like podcast a few months ago, and man like so also been talking about like Terry, like he's been talking about like free energy, but like himself, like he also like does have to have like a tattoo like on one of his arms that's actually based on like the Freemason compass. I'm pretty sure. So like once again, like I'm skeptical like when it comes to any of these like celebrities, but like himself, like Raj like has been like saying like a lot of like interesting stuff.
Yeah, and like I watched him talk about child trafficking and things like that yesterday, and at first I'm thinking, okay, he's saying all the right things, and then I just my radar goes up because
Yeah.
one is when they're on these platforms that are huge, they're on those huge platforms, and they don't allow things on huge platforms. Like the people
Right.
that control the huge platforms are the people at the top. So they control who talks, they control what they say. And it's I think I look at Aaron Rodgers and what he was saying yesterday as the same thing as like Jim Caviezel doing the child trafficking movie. Like, yeah, they're saying and doing the right things, but where like what's the hidden agenda
Outcome.
behind that?
Right.
Yeah, and to me, a lot of the child trafficking things is I 100% think that happens, but I think they play it
Yeah.
up they more than it's actually going on, and maybe in the future because they play the long game, maybe that is just scare tactics to want people or to make people microchip their kids. So hey, you know where
Interesting.
your kids are going to be
Wow.
if they're microchipped. So I
That's
just
super
always think
interesting.
I think anyone on the mainstream is controlled on some level, and I think
Right.
that's just the tool they use all the time is to pull you in with the truth they speak so they can direct you further on. And like a lot of
Right.
they do a great job because they'll give you 90% truth, but
Yeah.
then it's the 10%
Yeah.
you got to watch out for.
Yeah, well, like all the celebrity truth tellers, like what was gonna tell you some level of truth, but then, it's always gonna be like surrounded by tons of like lies, and like something else like I actually found like interesting, like so like my favorite like podcaster like Sam Tripoli, he's always like talking about like the concept of like safe dangers, like as opposed to like dangerous, like so like for instance whenever one of these like celebrity truth tellers like tries to like real people in like by talking about like any of these like safe dangerous topics, like, whether it be like, child trafficking, like whether it be like the whole transgender like agenda, like whether it be like any of these topics that divide people along the lines of, like left versus right, like so like all those stuff like heavily promoted like by all the platforms, like all the algorithms, like marketing, show everyone like this content, like all these people like, are gonna be seen like as like these truth tellers, but then like often like what ends up happening, like all these guys like, end up stopping like at like a certain point, and then like they're never actually gonna take you further beyond that.
It's funny you say Sam Tripoli. I just
He's
before
awesome.
I am he was the like when I first got into the truther stuff, he was definitely, the tinfoil hat podcast was
Yeah.
definitely the first one I got into. I was just listening. Someone actually sent me his most recent episode like 2 days ago, and they said, hey, listen to around this mark because they talk about the Jim Carrey, Joe Biden stuff.
Really?
They didn't mention me, but they were talking specifically about my reels I've done with it. So but I started listening to it, and the woman he had on was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
She and I have such similar just views on the world, and a lot. She thinks like I do that a lot of the people we see in the mainstream are just actors playing multiple roles, and not just Jim Carrey, Joe Biden, but even talking about my friend and I were talking the other day about Aaron Rodgers and how him and Jim Caviezel are very similar heights, very similar builds, very similar looks, very
Really?
similar voice, very similar messages. So, we were kind of drawing the comparison there, and they're like the exact height, and I think there's a lot of that going on. I think there are a lot of people playing multiple roles. It's the Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden when he's falling isn't a anomaly. I think it's the norm, and we just don't know, and we don't pay close enough attention. And the technology and the disguises are that good, I think.
Speaking of which, so, like, let's dive right into this now. What are the odds, like any of these people have actually been like cloned, like as opposed to them like actually being played like by actors, like, and also, how did you actually first get into the whole Jim Carrey is playing Joe Biden theory? Like, what
Yeah,
started that?
I don't know. Part of me, there's a big part of me that thinks the clone thing is a psyop. I really do. There's a part that makes me think it's kind of like the Mandela effect, where it's not fully what we think. Like, I do think maybe they can, you know, um, have the DNA from people who have lived in the past and like, but I don't think they're making clones where they're like literally printing a body or something like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
there are people that have shared DNA, and you can take my DNA and put my DNA in like a incubator and make a new person, but it's going to take a full 43 years to get to someone that's similar to me. So I think the
Right.
clone thing's a little bit of a psyop.
Interesting.
I do think there's a lot of people that are acting, but I also do think fallen angels are a real thing, and who knows what their abilities and capabilities are as far as morphing and appearing as.
Disembodied, like fallen angels, are actually known as like the disembodied spirits, like of the Nephilim, right?
I
Wait, no. Demons, like,
Yeah,
are the disembodied spirits, like, of the Nephilim.
there you go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and as far as getting into the Jim Carrey, Joe Biden thing, before I was awake, and I haven't been awake to this stuff for more than a year. Literally around this time last year is where the veil started kind of being lifted for me, and I think I even saw a Jim Carrey clip. Oh, it was just a woman. It was just a video of a crazy, or maybe it was right around this time last year when I was waking up,
Mhm.
but it was just a Trump woman, a Trump fan being interviewed about it, and she said some little thing about, "Oh, that was Jim Carrey. He's playing Joe Biden some of the time. Joe Biden died years ago," and it was like the smallest thing,
Wow.
and I was like, it just like it hit me, and I was like, yeah, like I'm a very visual person. I think I have a little bit of a photographic memory. Is I've always been able to
I
like
do too, I think.
yeah, I've always been able to
Yeah.
recall memories, recall
Same,
exact cards playing
same here.
poker, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I'm very visual too. So as soon as I saw the Jim Carrey thing, I was just like, that's his body language when Joe Biden fell up the stairs. And then I when I started to think about it, I wanted to look for Jim Carrey things with a stair scene, and I looked, and the very first one I found was Bruce Almighty, and it's like a very small thing where he just says something to Morgan Freeman, and he takes his hand up and he's like, "I'll see you at 7 on 7," and I was like, okay, and then I looked at the clip of him going up, and it's like the timing was impeccable. Like he put his hand
Wow.
up to his mouth when Joe Biden put his hand up to salute, and then they put their hands on the railing at the exact same time, and I was like, it's predictive programming. This is exactly matched. And I just, for whatever reason, even though I'm the biggest Dumb and Dumber fan, it didn't click right away of the Dumb and Dumber scene with him falling up the stairs.
Uh-huh.
But I put together this clip of just the Bruce Almighty scene, and I put together this clip with all the times I found this thing on YouTube of Jim Carrey falling like literally 100 times. I'm like, okay, his comedy is falling, like he's a falling actor, and
Right.
just kind of made a case for it, and like it blew up. It was my first ever, I think, 2 million view post.
So
And
sick.
then I just kept getting these downloads like week after week. I would remember a scene of Jim Carrey falling, and then I would look it up, and Joe Biden would fall. And I mean, there's like 5 different times where Joe Biden has fallen, and every single one I have found an identical fall to Jim Carrey.
So crazy.
One is him being Fire Marshal Bill, and there's a salute at the same time where their hand goes up. There's one when Jim Carrey's falling off a bike, I think on the Ellen show, and Joe
Mm.
Biden is falling off a bike. There's another one where right when Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura is getting out of a pool and does like a hand motion, Joe Biden does a hand motion on the very beginning of his walk to the stairs to Air Force One. So I just kept finding it, and it all tied up. It was the one Joe Biden walk from leaving a helicopter, walking, going up the
Falling,
stairs, yeah,
falling on
falling.
the steps and tripping over himself like
Yeah, and
three
I
times.
mean, it is. There's like 5 different movies that add up to the one Joe Biden walk, and it's just, to me, it is too much of a coincidence.
Coincidence? I think not!
Way too much. Like, it would be like getting struck by lightning 5 times in one day for it to
Right.
not be just predictive programming. And it's funny, like, everybody who's a little bit awake is like, oh, I see it now. And then
Mhm.
I've had like 1 or 2 people who are very awake. They're like, nah, that's, I don't understand. You're reaching here, bro. I'm like, I don't know. It looks pretty clear to me.
Wait, so like, I actually have like two responses to that. Like, so like, first of all, like, could there actually be multiple different people who are actually playing Biden? Like, could there actually be like 3 or 4 like body doubles or something like that?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think I won't be able to think of his name off just the top of my head, but there's an actor that people have said play him a lot. They've said Dana Carvey, which I've seen or I could see, but and I claim Jim Carrey is only playing him while he's falling. I've seen another time where I'm like, that is exactly just like, like I said, I'm a visual person. I've coached weightlifting and shot put and discus where I
Right.
study people's movements for 20 years, and just the way the postures and the movement of Jim Carrey versus the Joe Biden that's falling, it's too similar. So I
Interesting.
think Jim Carrey is doing it when he's falling, and I don't think Jim Carrey is doing it all the time. I do think they have
Right.
other body doubles for
3 or
sure.
4 of them probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So, like the second thing like, I actually want to bring up, like when it comes to Jim Carrey, are you familiar with like this idea? Like when it comes to like 2 of Jim Carrey's most famous movies, like so like Liar Liar, like the whole like, concept like, of that movie was actually based on like this idea, like Jim Carrey's like character like, was no longer able like to like tell any lies. And then like the movie that came out right after that, like was actually the Truman Show, like which actually reveals like kind of like flat stuff like you can possibly even like like it could like land behind the ice wall. So like I definitely find like very interesting like if like it actually was like Jim Carrey like who was like chosen like to play by him like it's like real like all it's like truth like it's definitely very odd like the order like, of those movies like coming out.
Yeah, this will sound crazy to anyone that actually hears this, but there is a little part of me that thinks people like him are actually the fallen angels. And
Really?
yeah, there is a part of me, and I, even seeing clips of him when he's doing, impressions, I've seen his face contort and move in ways that just don't seem human to me. And then when you look at,
Mask also, right? Like the whole Mask movies, like his mouth like is constantly like stretched up and down. Like
yeah, and I just,
that's interesting.
there are things in the Book of Enoch that refers to angels as stars, and they call the movie stars, and
Right. I've heard that
the fallen
also.
angels who wanted to be worshipped like God, and they're here because they, instead of worshiping God, they wanted to be worshipped like him. And what better way to be worshipped on a level in today's society than to be a movie star?
Movie
So
star.
yeah, so there's a little part of me that thinks that Jim Carrey isn't, not a puppet controlled, but actually just finding ways to be worshipped as the fallen angel. And I
Interesting.
know that sounds crazy to some people, and I don't fully subscribe to it either, but
Mhm.
there's definitely half my brain goes there for sure.
Right. Like, what do you think? Like, the actual purpose, like, is like behind like behind like having someone like Jim Carrey, like, actually play the role of Biden. Like, do you think it could just be like massive like, campaign, like, to like mock all of us, like, as well as like to actually invert everything, and like, it's like show everyone like how like dumb like all of us are, like more than him. Like, could this just be like, the way like for like all of the elites, quote unquote, like, to have like fun with us, and then it's like laugh at us basically.
All the time. Mocking. All the time.
Yeah, I do think there is a big part of that that's just mockery, and it's just like, man, we can get away with everything, and these dumb people don't even have the foggiest idea. I do think I saw a clip the other day that that kind of resonated with me with what you're asking, and it was something to the effect of our job is done when everything they think is
I
true
saw
is
that.
false and everything is false is true. So I think it's part of that is just if we can't trust our senses, we can't everything we think is true isn't true, then we have no choice but to rely on them to give us
Right.
what our truth is. So I think
Interesting.
part of it is that too as well.
And my man's like speaking of like that same exact concept, like so like are you familiar with like Aldous Huxley? Like he was actually the author like of like the famous book Brave New World. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not, no.
So like he was like the author like behind like one of these like super famous like dystopian novels but, like he was also like heavily associated with like Tavistock like Institute like I mean like one of like his famous quotes like was actually like very similar like, to that one like has to do with like of like the whole like, disinformation like, campaign like being complete like once like we can actually get everyone like to believe that snow is black basically.
Yeah, that I really think that is a big part of it, and it goes to the fact of I would say, man, in my life, 99% of the people don't even know where they live. And
Yeah.
they think they live somewhere they don't. They think they live on a ball spinning 1,000 miles per hour and 66,000 miles per hour and 400,000 miles per hour. So if you can't even know where you live, you need to rely on people to give you your information. And
Right.
I think that's what it is. And that is power to them. If you need to rely on them, then they have all the power. And that is exactly what I've done spent the past year doing is taking my power back. And
Yes,
I
definitely.
feel so much more in charge and in control of my own life because
Same
I
here, yeah.
know that. Yeah, and it's all I'm trying to do is empower others to get that power back. And it's funny, people, there's a huge faction of people that want that power and they're seeking that power back. And there's a huge faction of people that just are happy relying on others and relying on not knowing the truth. And it's maddening to me because even though I only came into some of these truths within the past year, I do think if someone would have tapped me on the shoulder and been like, "Hey, Tyler, I got some things to tell you. The world is a little different than what how it actually is." I think I would have wanted to hear them out, and it's
Yeah,
mind-boggling to me that people don't want to hear truth or
yeah.
just even have the open mind enough to hear a different perspective and be open-minded to it.
Right, and my also like, speaking of which, so it's like a lot of people like will actually see like all more like beliefs like and all and, like all the topics like meaning like from like talking about like and like they actually see them like as being like almost like dream crushers like in the sense of like actually like what like so many of us like actually come to realize like the more like rabbit holes like we actually go down like is it like the most important thing that's actually been like hidden like from us like has actually been like our own power like man like our own like divinity like so like of course like those gonna be the faction of the intruder community like focused on the whole like doom and gloom and like the world sucks like everything is like ending like and all that but like on like the flip side of that like there's also like other people like us like who can actually take all this information and like see it as like we're actually able like, to take back our power like from all the lies and like we can actually see like yeah it's like we can actually see how like special like and how like amazing like each of us are but like every agenda like has been like based on like hiding that from us.
I think you and I have a very unique ability, my friend, that most people don't, and that's to learn these lies and go down the darkness and come out unscathed. And like it
Yes.
it did impact me on a certain level, but I think the information and the lies I was learning about impacted me in a negative way because the people I wanted to share it with were responding to me in a negative way. It wasn't that I was going down these rabbit holes and feeling all this darkness and
Yeah.
got stuck down there. It was that
Mhm.
when I tried to share it, I got rejected. So I think
Right.
you and I think we have a unique ability to go down the darkness and come out still unscathed.
I think so too.
And like when I tried to explain this to people and to my wife is like I was on one side of a tunnel and I went through this darkness and I came out and it was so light over here, but I was just sitting over in this light by myself, and I wanted to try to bring other people through the darkness to come
Yeah.
join me in this light, and no
Mhm.
one wanted to. But
I
I was
love
like, I
that.
know that the darkness sucks, the lies suck, the all the nonsense you don't want to learn about sucks, but it's so beautiful over here. And what I
Yeah.
learned is I just had to find the other people that were already in this light to be able to enjoy it to the fullest. And some people have come along the way, but not as many as I wanted, but
Yeah.
luckily, and
It takes time though, I think.
it does. And if they all did, I wouldn't have met all the people that were already on the other side. And
Right.
I love people like you and so many friends I've made that I would have never known if the people I wanted to come on the ride with me did. So it
Yeah.
just opened up a door of new friendships and relationships and opportunities that I never would have had if those original people came with me.
Yeah, definitely. So like, I want to segue now, like, into like some of these other like, topics. Would you be able like to explain the whole Statue of Liberty like theory, like when it comes like to like Statue of Liberty like, actually representing Lucifer, like, as well as like how like Elvis like actually ties into this? I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I will do my best. It is such a better story with visuals because the
Right.
visuals just do it justice. But um,
I can actually put like in pictures like up on the screen to like
oh, perfect.
when I actually edit this stuff.
Okay, perfect. So a few months ago, gosh, I can't even remember where I first saw it. There was somewhere, I don't know if it was some other truthers page. Oh, I think I just saw there's a 1797 picture of Lucifer, and it's a painting, and it's of him with like the very similar Statue of Liberty pose. And I saw someone, I think, just compare the two pictures, and just the way I operate, I want to get to the bottom of things. So I
Yeah.
just started digging in, and when you hear Lucifer is the light bearer and the Statue of Liberty is holding a torch, and you learn about Lucifer being imprisoned in the bottomless pit because that's where the angel with the key to the bottomless pit put him for the entire millennial reign. And he's got a chain hooked onto him, and then you look at even the facial structure of what Lucifer looks like in this 1797 painting to what the Statue of Liberty facial structure looks like. And then there's just, so many different poses you see Lucifer posed in that looks so similar. So I made this post months ago and it got a
Mhm.
ton of traction. And I think I just set it up really well where it made sense. And it was very hard to deny that the Statue of Liberty was actually kind of a nod to Lucifer. And then just the past week or so, I came across this 1848 statue of Lucifer, and it was actually a statue of Lucifer. And upon further examination, it was just undeniable that the Statue of Liberty is a representation of Lucifer because
Right.
this statue of actual Lucifer, the fallen angel with wings, he was holding a 7-point crown in his hand, which the Statue of Liberty has. There was a torch at the bottom of his feet.
Is that
Um,
to like signify the whole pentagram or no?
for the 7 points.
Yeah.
I think it's actually more to signify the seven deadly sins.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So then the torch is obviously there's a torch sitting at his feet, and that's obviously in the Statue of Liberty's hands. And Lucifer is the light bearer as the Statue of Liberty is holding this torch. There was also an apple at the bottom of his feet in the
Mm.
statue, and obviously New York is known as the Big Apple. And then
Interesting. I
I'm
didn't
trying
even
to.
think
Oh, and
about
again,
that.
their facial structures side by side are strikingly similar. So when you see it and you don't have the blinders on of, oh, the Statue of Liberty is just signifying our freedom and it was given to us by France and it's a woman. When you see it with an open mind and you compare the two, it's undeniable that the Statue of Liberty is actually the statue of Lucifer. And it ties right in with something I believe strongly is that we're living in Satan's short season, and that's talked about in Revelation 27 of the Bible of
Mhm.
that we're post millennial reign, that Jesus has already come back. And that's, in my opinion, is what all the mud floods are. They're not some reset by the controllers. It's actually remnants of the 1,000-year millennial reign and probably Lucifer and the fallen angels coming up from the bottomless pit. And we're
Interesting.
living in that little short season. And that's why everywhere you look, there's a tribute to Lucifer with every single logo having 666 hidden in it,
Right.
every actor covering their eyes and doing the whole this thing. And like everywhere you look, it's a tribute to Lucifer. And it makes total sense that it's because we're living in his little short season where he's here to deceive the nations with things like the globe and evolution and the Big
Mm,
Bang and dinosaurs and things like that. So it ties in so perfectly to
right.
everything, the way I see the world. And I really don't think it's just confirmation bias. I think when you connect the puzzle pieces, they all fit very nicely.
So now, like, how does like Elvis like tie into this theory though?
Oh, that's it kind of ties into what I was saying about Jim Carrey, is that if there is a chance that the stars, the movie stars, the music stars, the actual people that we are worshiping as a civilization in today's age, in the days of old, it used to be the Greek gods, it used to be the pharaohs, I think all these different generations of people that have been worshipped have been the
Mhm.
fallen angels. And I think I don't know how
Right.
they do it. I don't know if they manipulate their appearance. I don't know what. I think they're undying beings. And I think right now, a lot of them are
Or on the
the,
other hand, like could actually be like one of the stars like actually channeling like one of the demonic spirits. Like when I had like Paul Stobbs like on the podcast, like so he actually spoke about like how like all these like celebrities like actually get like famous by actually dressing up like as like these clowns and then like I'm actually channeling like like these like demonic spirits. Like so like for instance, this is like the whole reason why like so many celebrities like actually have like these like alter egos. Like for instance, like Beyonce, like so like supposedly she's like the alter ego like Sasha Fierce. And there's also like plenty of other celebrities like who have like similar like ideas like to that.
yeah, I think there's multiple layers of things going on. I think there's definitely people that can summon spirits. I think that is a thing for sure. Like just an
Aleister
example.
Crowley,
Yeah, exactly. And I think, someone even like Flea on the Red Hot Chili Peppers talks about summoning spirits that can
sex
like
magic, right?
comport. Well, he in an interview with River Phoenix, they're talking about how they can summon spirits that comport through their nostrils and like can, and celebrities and singers talk about it all the time. So I
Right,
think there's definitely.
but also, like speaking of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like I'm pretty sure like one of the most like famous albums like is actually called like Sex Magic or something like that.
Yeah, Blood Sugar Sex Magic,
Yes,
I think. Yep,
that's what
yep,
it
yep.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately a really big fan of theirs, and
See,
it's like I don't like listening to their music
yeah.
anymore, but I still do. But man,
Well,
one of
wait,
their
like the way that like I'm actually gonna justify it, like so I'm like listening like to like music, like when they're like watching sporting events, like all that stuff, like so like I actually justify it like by actually separating the art from the artist, if
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, and I think intention plays a role too. If you're
Yes,
going in and you're not like listening to the words and absorbing it and thinking, oh, I'm
awareness,
gonna,
right?
yes, yeah, right.
Awareness is key.
Yeah. But getting back to the Elvis thing, and I definitely agree with you. I think there's two levels of things going on. I think people do, celebrities specifically, summon the spirits of the Nephilim, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And I think those spirits are here because they are, the Nephilim were beings that were created from the fallen angels mating with humans. And when their spirits die, they're stuck here. So I think there's that. But I do think the fallen angels are here. And I think they're undying beings that are, they look just like you and I. The Bible even talks about you never know
Mm,
when you're entertaining an angel because they look just like you and I. So I think someone
interesting.
like Jim Carrey, someone like Elvis, whose face also really resembles the Statue of Liberty when you look at it side by side. And when I tied in Elvis, there was no one more worshipped than him, probably in the world at his
Right.
time, other than like maybe Muhammad Ali. But when you also tie in the fact that Lucifer was known as the majesty of music in heaven, like it just makes you think. And you think of him and being worshipped. I have one of the things that really made me tie that in is there have been multiple times I've seen videos of him and him glitching out a little bit. Like
Really.
there's a time when he's talking to this little girl, he kisses her on the cheek, and like I kid you not, his eyeball like grows and pulsates, and like I don't think he's
Wow,
human. I really don't think he's human. And I think,
that's so
there were
crazy.
people, one of the biggest things that was a rumor about him is that he was an alien. And I don't think he was an alien. I think he was a fallen angel. And I don't know if he himself was a fallen angel, or he could take on, or like you said, like maybe the fallen angel spirit could take on his body. But
Yeah.
I think there was something more to him that meets the eye, and there's visual evidence of it. And I should send you the clip so maybe you
Mm.
can add that clip with
Yeah,
me
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about it, because
yeah.
it's
Please do.
trippy. It's trippy, and I've seen it. It's no camera trick. It's no video glitch. It's him glitching out.
And also explaining more like on this topic like Elvis like so like supposedly like Elvis like man like his mom like were actually variants like the occult I'm pretty sure supposedly like he was actually all about like magic like doing like certain like rituals like and stuff like that like so like a few months ago like actually was listening to this one like Sam Tripoli podcast where one of his guests like had done like this full on like deep dive like into like the whole like history of like Elvis like supposedly like he was into I'm pretty sure like according to this guy like Elvis like was actually trying to use this stuff like for like good purposes but then like he also like had like a troubled past himself. There's definitely like a lot of like interesting like layers like when it comes to the whole like stardom like behind Elvis, I think.
Yeah, and I haven't looked too much into his past. Part of me doesn't like, for stars, for people we see on TV.
Right.
A lot of me,
Doesn't trust them.
I don't believe the
Yeah.
stories that are. I
Right.
think they're homegrown. They're coming from a CIA base where they're
Mm,
like producing these people to put
right.
in front of us. I think there's a level of that. I think there's a level of demonic possession. I think there's a level of maybe the fallen angels are running the show at the top. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all speculation, obviously, but I think there's some evidence to make you think a lot of that's going on for sure.
Definitely. The next rabbit hole like I went to dive down like is like we can either get into like the whole Dogman one like or on the other hand like dive into the recent like evidence like you've been finding from dragons like and giants. So like which one like would you prefer like to get into next?
Why don't we go dragons into dogs?
All right, let's do it.
So, did we talk about the dragon post at all last time? I don't remember.
Not no. So like last time like was definitely mostly focused like on flat Earth, I think.
Okay. So the dragon post was, man, that was maybe the most fun I've ever had researching, discovering, and finding something that I felt was very organically found myself. And I had help. I have a friend of mine, Mike Manning, who does like a mud fossil page on Instagram. Look him
Right.
up, guys. It's Mike Manning. It's not Mud Fossil University, but so if you type in Mike Manning mud fossils, you'll get it. But anyway, he made a post, and his post was, it was a picture of like these giant looking square blocks, and they were side by side by side, and it was
Where?
in Utah. It was in
Mm,
Utah, and he made this post, and the only thing the post said was, and it may have said more, but I think the caption was just, they would never tell us how big dinosaurs actually were. And I'm looking at this, and then I'm at this point, I'm like, I don't really believe in dinosaurs.
yeah.
So, what are these things? And there are these giant,
4.6 from 4.6 billion years ago, like
yeah,
dinosaurs
right.
were here, and then like all of a sudden, this random comet came, wiped them out, and then like everything created order through chaos.
Well, not only that, but it's 66 million years ago, and the comet that killed them just happened to be 6 miles big. So you get your 666 right there in the
Right.
dinosaur story. But so I see this post, and I'm like, well, I don't really believe in dinosaurs anymore. So my initial thoughts were these were blocks that giants had either stacked or like cut. But I'm like, I want to look more into this because, like I said, I didn't believe in dinosaurs. And so I go to Google Earth, or actually, I had to ask Mike. I was like, hey, can you give me the coordinates of this? I want to research it more. So I get the coordinates, I go on Google Earth, and I'm zoomed in close, and you can see these blocks spread out for miles upon miles upon miles. And some are square, some are more rectangle, some are bigger than others, some small. And I'm just like, what? But a lot of them look very, you know, perfectly square, perfectly. They don't look like they're not jagged. They look
Uh,
very well cut.
are
And these
they
things are the size of 50.
rocks? Or,
Yeah, they look like rocks, kind of like rocks
uh,
cut into the side of cliffs and mountains. And, some of them were the size of like 15 cars. They were huge. So I zoom out and I don't really see anything. I'm still seeing these rocks. Zoom out a little more, don't see anything. I'm looking for something just to like clue me in on what this is. And I just keep zooming out, and all of a sudden, just this outline, this red outline starts to come into view, and I just zoom out more and more and more. And before I know it, I'm seeing this perfectly outlined, rust looking red outline of what's looks like a dragon to me. And
mm,
you can see this neck, and you can see what looks like a head. And when I say this thing's huge, it's in Utah, but it's the size of Utah. It's enormous.
really?
It's at the four corners of, whatever the four corners are. I think it's the four corner states: Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and I don't remember the
Col-
fourth. Colorado, I
Colorado,
think.
maybe?
Yeah, it
Is
is.
it?
Yeah. So I see this thing and I'm like, holy cow! Like, what I was actually looking at, these blocks are the petrified scales of this giant dragon. And I had already, like, at this point, I already fully believed dragons
Right.
existed and giants existed and not dinosaurs. So I'm looking at this thing and I'm trying to explore more. And then I get the idea to type in dragon just in the search bar to see what I see. And I type in dragon and it brings me right to where the dragon's head is. And it says dragon reservoir, right where you
Right.
see the open mouth of the dragon. So I'm just like, man, they know it's here. They put it right in plain sight. There was Dragon Head Trail, there's Dragon Canyon all around this thing. I even found something called it's called the Fern's Nipple, and it's literally a breast and nipple of this dragon right on its
Right.
chest, and you can literally see the petrified nipple and all the scales and everything. And it was just fascinating. I had so much fun putting it together and trying to, like,
Uh,
when I make my post, I want people to really be able to buy it. I don't like presenting things to people that are
yeah.
speculation. I like to present evidence, and
Mm,
I just think I had some really good evidence, and it blew up. And I think because of the way I did it, I think there was
yeah.
evidence that it was there. So once you have something that people can feel and see and believe is true, like,
Mm,
that's when stuff blows up, in my opinion. So
yeah.
it was just so much fun to do that video.
But so like, has that video like also like also like tie into the whole like dragon like paving the way like in the whole Grand Canyon?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so I
Perfect
found that
segue.
dragon weeks and weeks ago, and then I saw someone do a post on the Grand Canyon, and it was just something like, what actually is this place? And I had heard someone say a theory that I really liked, that, that whole Milky Way, they're like, maybe that lines up perfectly with the Grand Canyon, and that the flood, when the heavens opened up, that's where the
Hmm.
heavens opened up mostly and dropped and just created the canyon. And I was like, that's a
Interesting.
pretty cool thing to think of. Like, it ties in with the Bible. But so I had that in the back of my mind. But
Mm,
when I saw people posting on the Grand Canyon, and I was like, it was rock that looked fleshy, like petrified flesh in different layers. And I was like, huh. I was like, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I know where it is generally, but I want to go look at my dragon, and I want to go see where that dragon is compared to the Grand Canyon. And when I did that, man, it was right in one of the wings of the dragon. And
uh-huh.
just when you had the upper perspective to look at it, it looked exactly like veins of this huge petrified dragon. And then I was like, well, it looks like veins. I'm going to go look to see what a bird's vein looks like. And I couldn't really find good bird's veins, but I found good bat's veins, which to me, a bat's wing is probably more similar to what a dragon's wing would have been like.
Uh-huh.
And the bat's wing looked exactly, or the bat's wings vein looked exactly like what this dragon's wings vein
Right.
looked like. So I was like, I was like, I really think that the Grand Canyon is the veins of this dragon. And it makes sense, because if the terrain you're walking on is all petrified dragon flesh,
Hmm.
then the veins wouldn't have petrified, because the the fluid, the blood in those veins would have dried up, and you would have been left with these crevices inside the terrain of the petrified dragon flesh. So I don't know, to me, it just made sense. And it was just another one of those things where I think I presented it well enough with the visual evidence that it was another one of those videos that did really well, just because I
Yeah.
think people were like, okay, maybe this guy's onto something here.
So like speaking of that, like, do you think that like any of these like crevices, or any of these giant rock formations that are actually like authentic rocks? Like on the other hand, like, do you think like all of them like are actually like these petrified, like petrified titans, like petrified giant bones, like petrified dragons? Like, what do you
I
think?
I I am of the belief that everything we walk on was once a living being. And I'm not talking like,
Really?
Oh, you're crazy.
Am I? Or am I so sane that you just blew your mind?
and I'm not talking like a tree is a living being or a plant. I'm talking about living, breathing, walking beings of some sort, because I have found ones that blow your mind. And part of me finding that dragon is the terrain was literally the scales, like what people are walking on is petrified scales. And I don't know, when you fly, you see all these different block formations. Like throughout the Midwest, you see like square after square after square, and
Yeah,
it just like you're like, what is that? And
it's true.
and I think what that is it's petrified tissue. It's petrified skin tissue, and I have found, like, we can get into it in a second, but like
Yeah,
the dog
right. Yes.
Anubis thing is,
Want to get
it's
into that?
170 freaking miles long. 170. So, and I've found things bigger than that. I've found, to me, I think the entire continent of North America is, if you turn the upside down, or the flat earth upside down, it looks like a living being at one point. And, I think everything was way, way, way bigger. Not just like they talk about in the Bible, giants being like a mile or two. I think this place is enormous, and I think we're just in a little ant hole. And outside of this is there are potentially still just massive Godzilla, like King Kong size beings and animals and
It's so
dragons
cool to
probably
think
still
about.
around. Yeah.
So like, where do you think like all these like giants, like all these like giant like creatures like actually went? Like, do you think like, maybe it's even possible like some of these other like lakes, quote unquote, like some of those makes you be like fully like inhabited like by all these like massive creatures, like maybe certain like other like lakes, like more like other like Earths, like actually don't have like any humans, like maybe some of them like actually have, fully in giants, like more fully dragons.
Yeah, and like I'm a big Bible guy. I think the Bible is one of the few places you can still get truth. And yeah, of course, I
Hmm.
think there's been manipulation and books
Right.
removed from it, but I think, even I think the Bible is the story of our part of Earth.
Our lake,
Yeah,
right.
and I think there's potentially, I know I really believe there's a firmament, but I think potentially maybe there's one firmament and then a bigger firmament. And
Hmm.
I just think the Bible is the story of us. And I think the giant petrified animals, I think a lot of them died and petrified in the flood, because I think it's pretty obvious just from every single ancient culture references a worldwide flood. So I think, and water has a lot to do with petrification. Now, where I do start to wonder is that there are a lot of beings that seem to be frozen and petrified in place, like instantly,
What do you mean?
well, so like the giant, you can see like the mountains, a lot of the mountains look like they're lying down
Yeah,
giants that died, but there
titans,
are,
right?
yeah, titans, but there are petrified looking beings that look like they literally died like instantly, like in motion.
What
I
you
know,
two?
I know. Freeze.
And you wouldn't think, if you're petrified from a flood, water and all the minerals and things get like, you wouldn't petrify instantly. There's a lot of
Right.
things that look like it was like that, and they just turned to stone. So I don't know if that was some sort of act of God. There is talk of in the Bible of um maybe these giants here that were created from the fallen angels, maybe there were multiple attempts to kind of get rid of them because they were not what God wanted. They weren't,
Mm.
perfect beings. And maybe we're in a little protected realm here and those things still exist, and that the Bible is the story of them, kind of their extinction so we could exist here without being eaten. There are all these ancient trees that look like they're literally chopped down perfectly. They're
Yeah.
not like, they don't look like they broke. There's tons that look like someone took a chainsaw and chopped them down perfectly flat. And
Wait. So like, speaking of like those massive like trees, like, have you ever seen any of the Shrek movies?
I have, yes, not for a
Yes.
long time though.
Yes, so like, have you ever noticed like Shrek's house in his swamp? Like, actually appears like to look like one of these like trees that's been like cut off. And also, like during the first Shrek movie, one of the characters like actually makes reference like to giants in the movie. So like, I definitely found
It'll grind your bones for its bread.
Yes. Well, actually, that would be a giant.
that like it's possibly like revealing some like interesting truth there, possibly.
Well, now I'm gonna have to rewatch Shrek.
Yes,
I they
for sure.
you've probably seen it too, but they do that. Like in Back to the Future, Doc says something about, "Oh, we don't want to send you back over here because you run the risk of running into like ancient trees, and it's the stumps
Uh huh.
that people think are rocks, but they're the ancient trees." But it's funny you say the Shrek thing too, because I made a comparison of the Jack and the Beanstalk story of them chopping down the beanstalk, and I found this cartoon that talks about them chopping down this giant beanstalk, and then it killed the giant. The giants were never seen from again. So I think,
Hmm.
I think
Interesting.
those giant trees that were here, the Bible again talks about an angel coming down and chopping them down. And one, it would, if you don't have these giant trees, these giant beings might not have enough oxygen to survive. And
Right.
those
That makes
giant
sense.
trees,
Wow.
and those giant
I
trees
didn't
may
even
have
think
been
about
like
that.
a way for them to climb up and survive a flood too. So I
Hmm.
don't know, man. It's
That's
like they
so
say,
interesting.
truth is,
Truth
or
is,
whatever the saying is.
like, I think it's like truth is like truth is stranger than fiction most of the
There it
time.
is. It's so true too.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Has like this like concept like actually tie into like the whole dog human like hybrids like where these beings like actually come from?
Um, so I guess the best way to lead into it is from my dragons, because I was on the hunt for dragons and trying to
Mm.
find more petrified dragons, and I saw someone post one in Egypt, and it was just a picture of this cave that it looked like a dragon head. So I wanted to go find it on Google Earth. So I'm hunting in Egypt, and as I'm hunting, I see something that looks literally like a giant petrified dog head. And when I'm saying giant, I mean like this thing is like 30 miles long, and then its body stretches, another 100 miles, and it's all the way across Egypt. It looks like a perfect outline of a petrified dogman. And then,
Right.
immediately I thought of Anubis, who is this, demigod that is all over the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And I've just known about Anubis. He's a known, character, and he's a known person or being in the hieroglyphs. So I thought of this, and I started looking up images of Anubis. And almost right away, I found most of the images had Anubis with this staff, where at the
Mm.
end of its staff, he had almost like it was like a trident looking circle with a cross. It was a very distinct image. And when I go to this petrified 150-mile dog looking being in Egypt, I mean, lo and behold, there is this straight line looking petrified staff.
Like a
And
staff.
and at the top of it is this exact replica of what it looked like that he's always depicted with.
Wow.
And at first I was like, okay, are they just manipulating the images and the
CGI
CGI?
and stuff.
But I went to several different satellite images. I went to different, like everywhere I went to, and I would explore. I wouldn't just look, I would go in, and it was, the terrain is there. So again, I did a video kind of outlining the fact that, hey, there was a 150-foot dog being, and this is what Anubis actually was. And then connected the fact that the Sphinx in Egypt was probably a tribute to Anubis, and it's, because if you look at the Sphinx head, it doesn't match the size of the rest of the body, and it looks like it's a dog laying there. So I think most certainly the Sphinx is actually a tribute to this dog being. And I think there were a few other petrified looking beings right next to it. And it looked like there was a bird and an owl. And I found hieroglyphs with a bird and an owl with Anubis. So it
Wow.
just, to me, it's just further proof that we are ants living in a crazy place that
That's
giants used to roam.
It's so cool. Wait. So like, can like some of this like actually tie into like the whole like Anunnaki story, like certain beings like actually mating with like God's creation, but like in this effort like to actually create amongst like hybrid like beings so then like you actually you actually end up with like Dogman, like you end up with like Mothman,
Yeah.
but then like is it possible like God actually created like the whole like flood like to actually wipe out like all these like hybrids,
Yeah. Like I said, I find so much
X-Men
truth.
basically.
Yeah. And I
So,
find,
it's like the whole like concept like of X-Men so like former man.
yeah. Yeah. Like I said, the Bible is where I find truth, and it talks about hybridization of humans and animals, and the Nephilim or the fallen angels
Mm-hmm.
trying to create hybrids and mess with God's creation, and that, I mean, that's where the Bible talks about giants coming from,
Right.
and I think, yeah, I think there's evidence not even too long ago of these dog, half people beings existing, and they're called the cynocephaly, and there's evidence of them in all sorts of historians and explorers writings, in ancient maps. There's a map from, it's called the what is it, I'm not going to think of it, but there's a map as
Is
recently
it
from,
is it the 1587 map or no or something
it
else?
there's the Montez map, but I don't think that's it. I think I won't think of it. I'll send it to you.
All right.
So, but there's a map that's from I think it's from the 1600s,
Mhm.
and it depicts all these different beings, and it's not. And the map was even called the new precise map for the Americas, and it literally
Really?
has dog beings in it. I think it might even have dragons in it, and there's just records of these dog beings throughout history. They're called the cynocephaly. So, when you can find somewhat recent evidence of it, it doesn't make it that hard to jump that, well, if there's evidence of dog beings, then maybe they actually existed. And then, when you see evidence of remains of giant dog beings, it's not as far fetched as finding these giant dog remain, or this giant dog being remains, and having to jump to the conclusion of, well, it's hard to believe there were giants, and then it's really even harder to believe there were giants that were dogmen.
It's so
but
crazy.
but you can connect
So
the
cool.
dots, and it's hard to deny once you put some of the puzzle pieces together.
So like the last like topic like I want to get into unless like of course like if you like anything else like you would like to add to this like I definitely want to ask you about this like so like what's going on like off the coast of like South America like touching into like Antarctica like what's going on with those like reports of like these like massive like beings that like showing up like on like these like weather maps and stuff like that. So, what's actually going on down there?
It's a good question. I saw, I think it was shortly after the eclipse, there was what you're talking about. There were images of waves, and like
Yeah,
80-foot waves, and some sort of
yeah.
red thing on the Doppler and or the radar moving. And you know, I didn't look too much into it because part of me just thought it was like a big
Big
distraction. But
psyop.
yeah, but I don't know if you saw my post I did the other day, but
I
how,
saw that. Yes,
yeah,
the whole giant snake. I
yeah.
think right.
Well, and I saw someone post on this giant snake thing a couple weeks ago, and I explored it, and just for people listening, it looks like if you zoom in, and it doesn't matter if it's a globe or the flat Earth imaging, whatever you find. If you go to the bottom of South America, it looks like there's a giant snake head there in the images. And when I first heard about it and saw it, I kind of played it off. I zoomed in close, and you just couldn't get good imaging. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this is just them like paying tribute to the snake and the fallen and all that. And
Right.
but then I saw the Montez map. I mentioned that a minute ago, and that was from I think 1548, and Antarctica and South America, doesn't matter if you believe in a globe or flat Earth, they used to connect. And when you
Pangea,
look at
like
it, it looks like
everything.
something, yes. And when you look at the images now, it looks like something like blasted through there. And then
Right.
you look at the images again, and it looks like there's a giant snake head there. And I don't know why at first it was far fetched for me, because I know I believe in these giant
Yeah.
monster sized animals. So
Right.
I think that for sure some giant snake, maybe, one of the giant um, snake like or dragon like or serpent like things talked about in the Bible, busted through there. And I don't know if it knocked itself out and drowned, or if it was trying to escape the flood. But pretty
Uh-huh.
sure there's a giant petrified snake down there. And
So
anyone listening to this,
cool.
just go to Google and go to look at the bottom of South America, and you will see it. It's huge.
Right. That's so cool.
It's
All right.
crazy.
All right, so like, do you like any other topics like we went into like for this episode? Like, more like, should we actually save up some topics like for your next appearance?
Well, let me just mention this one because I thought it was really cool. One of the things I've been enjoying the most is like finding things out that I feel like nobody else has. Like there are a few
Uh,
things I'll dive a little deeper on, but the other day someone sent me something about the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, or maybe it's Northern Ireland.
mhm.
I was made aware that Ireland and Northern Ireland are two separate countries. I don't think I knew that, but
Really?
I believe so. But
I never
anyway,
knew that either.
yeah. So they sent me something. They're like, "Hey, will you use your investigative eyes and go check out the Giant's Causeway?" So I usually don't take a lot of requests because I just love to do things like
Right.
authentically
And
and be inspired on my own. But
mm,
I was like, okay, I'll check it out, and it immediately had all these just crazy looking rock formations, and they were like hexagonal, and sometimes they were um, octagonal. So I started exploring, and I was looking for animals, and I zoomed out, and right away I saw this I saw this rock formation that looked like a horse's head. And
mhm.
I was like, what? So I started researching horse flesh and what horse flesh looked like, but it wasn't it. And then I just typed in like hexagonal flesh of an animal or scales, and it brought me to an armadillo. And this armadillo, when you look at an armadillo, they've got these like goofy little short arms, and they have
Uh,
kind of what looks like a horse head. And what I had found is that there's a petrified giant armadillo like creature that is creating this Ireland Giant's Causeway. And
really?
it's one of those things where it sounds insane, but when you go look into it
It's
and you look at my
undeniable.
video, it's hard to deny. I think even
Right.
if you're someone who's not a truther and you watch my video, you'll be like, okay, there's a giant petrified armadillo that is making up the Giant Causeway. So I just wanted to mention that one just for
Yeah, for sure.
people listening.
I
It's a
love
fun
all this
rabbit hole
stuff.
to go look into.
Uh, awesome. All right, wait. So, like, anyways, like, if you guys haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to my channel. And Tyler, do you want to tell my listeners where to find you?
Yes, I am Fittest Flat Earther on everything except Instagram. I am the Fittest Flat Earther. So just a little difference on Instagram, the Fittest Flat Earther versus just Fittest Flat Earther. On all platforms, pretty much, I'm on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. That might be it.
This guy like is absolutely blowing up. Like, anyway, it's like this guy is absolutely blowing up. Like, it's crushing like the whole content game. And then, so like Tyler, like as like I always say to you, like you are always welcome to come back on like anytime. So this episode like incredible. Like everything you spoke about like is like super interesting. Like as always, like guys, remember like everything that like Tyler said in this episode is for entertainment purposes only.
You got it, my friend. And hey, thanks for having me on.
Of course.
This is honestly one of the best podcasts I've ever done. Just like so
Thank
much
you.
fun going
I
back and
appreciate
forth.
that. Yeah.
And I always love chatting with you. So
Same
anytime,
here.
especially after I move and I'm a little more settled, I'll have
Right.
plenty of time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me once again. We're definitely gonna have to have plenty more episodes in the future.
Absolutely, and you keep kicking butt, my friend, or
Thank
as well,
you.
my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyways, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.